Well, welcome to the General and the Journalist podcast, a new podcast from the Times and the Sunday Times. The global order is breaking down, conflict is on the rise, and the world is getting ever more dangerous.
And we're here every week to try and explain it all. And the general part of the equation, that's you, Patrick, General Sir Patrick Sanders, formerly Chief of the General Staff, the professional head of the British Army.
And you are the journalist half, Tom. Tom Newton Dunn, a former defence correspondent and political editor, and now a broadcaster at the Times.
So this is our chance to say who we are. So why don't you go first? Who exactly are you, Patrick?
Well, I've recently stepped down as one of the UK's Joint Chiefs of Staff. So that's the 6 serving defence chiefs who command their services and provide military strategic advice to the Defence Secretary and the Prime Minister of the day. And my last role, as you say, was as CGS. So that's the professional head of the British Army. Of course, not the Commander-in-Chief, because in the UK, that is His Majesty the King, who's the Commander-in-Chief. And before that, I did the role of commanding strategic command for 3 years. And that's all the sort of sexy bits of defence. So it's intelligence, it's cyber, it's space, it's our special forces.
Okay, so 40 years in the British Army. Where did it all begin?
Well, it began in West Germany, as it was, defending Europe against the Soviet Union from behind the Berlin Wall. And of course, that's where we find ourselves now. We're now facing up against Putin's Russia, arguably a lot more hostile and dangerous than the Soviet Union was. And that was commanding 30 soldiers, riflemen in my regiment, who were very tolerant, very kind, and put up with all the mistakes I made. And
surely not, General.
Well, they and sort of forged me into at least a better officer after a couple of years of that.
So from a young second lieutenant all the way up to a 4-star general, what was your most memorable experience?
Well, I think if you told my first platoon sergeant that I would have become a 4-star general, he'd have laughed out loud. But the most memorable was commanding my battle group in Basra, 4 Rifles battle group, so about 1,200 men and women, in probably the most dangerous operation that I've been involved in over the last 40 years. So it was right at the peak of the most dangerous bits of the Iraq campaign. Over the course of the first 3 months of that 6-month tour, we took 17 killed and about 120 wounded under constant rocket artillery fire, sniper fire, lots of roadside bombs. The irony is that I've never been in an organisation that's had higher morale, despite all of those challenges.
And absolutely the height of the Iraqi insurgency as well.
Anyway, enough about me. What got you into covering wars and defence and politics, Tom?
Well, it was 9/11, really. The September 11 terrorist attacks in New York City and the Pentagon. That changed absolutely everything. And at the time, I was working for a newspaper that didn't have a defence correspondent. So I went to see my editor and said, I think you need one, and I think you should be me. That man was one, Piers Morgan, and he agreed. So I then spent the next decade or so covering first Afghanistan and then Iraq and then back to Afghanistan, and a lot of time with the guys on the front line during embeds. And one of those embeds, of course, was with you, 2007 in Basra. You were at the end of that incredibly difficult command tour where you lost all those guys. Casualty rate, something like 1 in 10, horrific. Your unit was the last one left. You were the thin red line, really, and we were sent out to cover your withdrawal.
Yeah, and I remember that night, so a long, difficult operation, very, very hot, so close to 50 degrees, and we were expecting it to be very bloody, and in the end it wasn't. But when we came into the airport, long line of armoured vehicles, the first person I met when I got off my Warrior was you, and you took a picture that still hangs in my office of that long line of armoured vehicles with the flags flying from them. And you did us a big favour. I'll always be grateful, because you and the Sun put 4 Rifles Battle Group on the front page. You called us the Lions of Basra.
The Lions of Basra.
That's right.
I remember the front page now.
And that put a spring in the step of my soldiers, and I think as well helped with certainly helped to mitigate some of the mental health and PTSD issues we would have had from that tour, because it made everyone who served in that battle group realise that what they had done counted for something and that it was appreciated. So I'll forever be grateful.
Well, that's very generous of you to say so, and I'm very grateful for you having us there. Then I got sent down to Westminster in 2009. I was made a political editor. It was fascinating seeing wars, decisions made from the other end of the spectrum, if you like. The big decisions, the big arguments being made that were then taken and affected the guys on the ground out on the front line. And the wars are still going on, very much so. And we were pretty critical of the government throughout.
That's where it all began for us. Why are we doing this podcast, Tom? What is it that we think we can offer?
Well, it's for a number of reasons that actually we've been talking about for really rather a long time. The coming together of several different things. First, both of us have got a real interest in war. It's been quite a large chunk of our careers. How wars start, how they're fought, why they end. But also, right now is a most extraordinary time in history. It really is all change and really quite scary as well.
Yeah, I think we're experiencing a hinge in history, if you like, a revolution in world affairs where everything that we took for granted, that extraordinary period of peace, security and prosperity that we've enjoyed, underpinned by the world order for the last 80 years, has now gone. And we don't know what's emerging. And so I think one of the things we might be able to offer is to try to explain what will emerge, what will shape it, and the part that defending ourselves and protecting our values, our way of life and the country plays, and trying to bring all of that to life.
And we'll try and do it from our two different ends of the telescope. Me with a bit more of a political overview, what the politicians are thinking, how they're reacting, what's really motivating them. And you obviously from a military one.
Yeah. And from a military perspective, I've spent my whole career trying to prevent war. And so I think it's super important that we try to convey an understanding that you can't outsource national security to institutions like the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. It's a whole of nation effort. And if you want to prevent war, the best way to do it is to prepare for it. Now, you and I spent a long time trying to work out what we were going to call this podcast. I think we had a list of about 15 or 20 names. Our favorite was Don't Panic. But it turns out that there are about 456 podcasts out there called Don't Panic, so that wasn't going to work.
There's a lot of panicking going on in the world, obviously.
And I don't think there should be, but I think there should be much better understanding. And if you want to prevent war, because the old Latin phrase goes, si vis pacem para bellum, so if you want peace, prepare for war.
Parabellum, which was another potential name for the podcast.
I thought that was really good.
But in the end, we decided to call it something simple. The General and the Journalist. Coming very soon. Please follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Tom.